I very much appreciate you having this hearing. I think it's incredibly important. And Mr. Chief Muncy, what you said at the beginning is so critical if we're actually going to have accountability and have the ability to properly manage and protect these resources. There are an awful lot of lies out there, and I'm going to have an opportunity to ask some additional questions. But there's a few things that I think everybody in this room ought to understand. In 2001, on January 12th, Bill Clinton, on his way out of office, adopted the Roadless Rule. It denied access, management, and use to 58.5 million acres of National Forest Service lands, and that is the reason why we're here today and why we have the crisis on our hands related to management of our national forests and the catastrophic forest fires and beetle outbreak that we have seen over the last 25 years. I'll just give you one example. In 1997, there was a blowdown in Route National Forest, knocked down 13,000 acres of trees in one night. Because the Forest Service, because that was a roadless area and partially a wilderness area, the Forest Service would not allow anyone to go in there and treat. All you need to do is look at Landsats. All you need to do is look at aerial photography, color infrareds, and you can watch as that pine beetle outbreak emanated outward from there. That's not because of global warming. That's not because of climate change. That is because of bad forest management and the Roadless Rule. That's the reason why our forests have been devastated, because of the Roadless Rule and bad policies coming out of Washington, D.C. And if you're unwilling to recognize that, we're never going to be able to fix our forests. We're never going to be able to protect these resources. So you're absolutely right. Until we're honest about what has happened in our national forests, we're not going to protect this resource. With that, I yield back. I filed a lawsuit in 2001 challenging the Roadless Rule. I was hired by the state of Wyoming to do that. And there's a few more points that I think are extremely important because, again, this is the source of many of the problems that we're dealing with in terms of forest management. I believe that the Roadless Rule is one of the most destructive regulations ever adopted in the history of the United States in terms of being able to manage and protect our forests, our watersheds, and our surrounding lands. And in fact, at the time that the Roadless Rule was adopted, the Forest Service and the Department of Justice defending it knew that it was going to be destructive. And I'll just give you one quote from the attorney who was handling the case in defense of the state, defending it against the state of Wyoming's lawsuit. When we pointed out that there were separate management plans for every forest throughout the United States, that it was inappropriate to treat all roadless areas the same, that a one-size-fits-all approach does not work, especially when you're talking about forest management. I will never forget what the U.S. attorney said when she got up to defend the Roadless Rule. She said, "We recognize that in certain areas the Roadless Rule is going to be ecologically devastating." That was the term that she used, ecologically devastating. But it is more important that we have one rule and one regime coming out of Washington, D.C. to manage these acres than protecting local particular areas. When I went through the administrative record, one of the things that I focused on were the comments that were received by the local foresters, the good men and women who actually work in the states, work in the national forests. They submitted thousands of comments, the vast majority of which opposed the Roadless Rule, and what they said is, please, please do not do this to us. Please do not prevent us from being able to manage our national forests. Please do not do this. We are going to have horrific insect infestations, and we are going to have catastrophic forest fires. You are going to destroy the resource if you adopt the Roadless Rule. Keep in mind, the national forests are 192 million acres strong. They were created within the Department of Agriculture. They are supposed to be managed as a commodity for a continuous supply of timber and a continuous supply of water. They are not a national park, and they are not within the Department of Interior. So the adoption of the Roadless Rule, again, is why we are facing this circumstance. The Fix Our Forest Act, which passed the House, expanded the permissible use of the Good Neighbor Authority to include reconstruction, repair, and restoration of roads on non-U.S. Forest Service lands to support forest management projects, and it did a whole variety of other things. And I'm very, very pleased that our panel today seems to be unanimous in supporting our Fix Our Forest Act. Mr. Weiner, I would like to refer to you. It is my understanding that there are some in the Senate who have proposed removing certain aspects of this bill. Could you please speak to the benefit of the authority that I just described that is expanded in the Fix Our Forest Act and what that would do to our ability to have active management?
Yeah, around Good Neighbor Authority?
Yes, please.
Yeah, Good Neighbor Authority is a really important tool to help build capacity for states to do some of this work on the ground, state and local partners, right? And I think that even if you take a step back from the current funding and workforce crisis that we're facing right now at the Forest Service, we're nowhere near on track to meet our goals. We need to come up with creative ways to fund these kinds of projects, and expanding Good Neighbor Authority is critical to doing that.
I appreciate that. And Chief Muncy, from your duty to provide community protection, can you explain why access to the ignition point is critical and how good roads and infrastructure enable this capability?
Yeah, it's a simple answer, is that fires are going to double in size every 4 minutes or so. If we can't make access, these fires are going to continue to grow. Now, there's other things that are important besides access. That's early detection. That's both terrestrial and celestial, such as low Earth orbiting satellites, and I think that this ecosystem is critical. Having the ability to detect wildfires, and an example I can give you is you have a lightning that starts a smoldering fire. It may not produce any smoke. Nobody sees it, but this fire smoldering could burn several acres, and then when the wind kicks up and it becomes hotter and drier, now you have a well-established fire. So that early detection is just as critical as that early access. Secondly is looking at technology on how we suppress wildfires. 2 weeks ago in San Bernardino, we piloted a fully autonomous Black Hawk helicopter with a company called Rain. It used early detection, in this case, cameras using AI to find the fire, and it doesn't have to be visible smoke with some of the spectrums. It automatically launched that helicopter that flew pilotless and dropped water on that fire, doing the fire behavioral modeling, returned, reloaded with water, and made drops. This is the future: early detection, early response, not necessarily humans on the ground, followed by control using robotics, and then truthing it out with boots on the ground, regardless. Even using technology in overgrown forests, using helicopter and aviation, you're not at times going to be effectively able to control fires. You need to get people there, hand crews, heavy equipment there. The only way that we can do that is having good access.
So I very much appreciate those comments. One last thing, I realize that I'm out of time, but I think it's important for everyone to understand. The National Forest Service created the Fraser Experimental Forest in northern Colorado many, many years ago. I believe that it's going on over 100 years in terms of being in operation. And the Fraser Experimental Forest is something that I would recommend everybody study and go see. They have studied everything from water development through forest management. They look at treating the north side of ridges versus the south side, what that does. They have done every study that you can possibly think of in relation to forest management. I don't know how much they do in terms of fire suppression, but in terms of management of the actual resource itself, we have massive amounts of data and information, and we know how to manage these forests effectively. It is things like the Roadless rule and bad policies and regulations coming out of Washington, D.C., and an obsession with global warming and climate change that is preventing us from doing this adequately. Please go to look at what the Fraser Experimental Forest has to offer in terms of giving us the tools to better manage these resources. Thank you, and I yield back.